Hello and welcome to another episode of the Space Update. Coming up on today's show, we'll be talking all-important SLS hotfire tests, Starship and Virgin Orbit, and other space news. I'm your host Ryan, and joining me today is...
I'm Mikko, the host of Deep Dive Fridays, and today we have a special guest, Mike, better known as Warhawk.
Hello there, my name is Mike, Warhawk on YouTube. I'm all over these channels.
Thanks for joining us, Mike, today. We'll probably just kick it straight off with Starship. We've got static fire going on, either possibly today as we're recording on Monday or later in the week. But more importantly, they've done a static fire last week and they've had to change 2 engines. And they've got static fire planned for 18th to the 20th of this week, and then potentially got a TFR for flight to the 18th to the 21st. So static fire and flight in the same week. Will it happen? Who knows? But a lot going on with Starship SN9 at the moment, isn't there?
Many things.
Yeah, it's been quite active at Boca Chica. I kind of doubted that we will have a flight this week, but another static fire would be good start.
I'm with Mikko on that. I believe static fire for sure first, then possibly a flight this week or next.
I just wonder if they've managed to sort that header tank, because obviously we know it lost pressure and everything, and obviously SN9 and 10 and a few other versions have already been pre-built. So if there's a fault with the header tank, it's already built, installed and everything there. So hopefully they've got a solution to resolve that problem with this next test flight with SN9.
I mean, I think they would have solved it, because otherwise, why would they push the tests?
Yeah, it was amazing what happened to that header tank. The vacuum happened so hard in it that it sucked the tank right down.
Yeah, and then we got that awesome, although as great as it looked, the green flame, it wasn't good news. As soon as I saw it, it was just like, just literally burning liquid oxygen. But fascinating to see anyway. So, but looking forward to it. I mean, I can imagine do the same flight profile. They're saying it's only going to go to around about 10 kilometers, about 7,200 feet or something like that. The next flight a bit lower.
Yeah, did we hear the reasoning on why they lowered it by 2.5 kilometers?
I didn't.
No, I don't.
Put you guys right on the spot.
No, they mentioned the lower flight profile, but whether they're just going to do a more simple hop as such, I don't know. Because when you think about it, it's essentially, it's not that much lower, really. Because before it was, I think it was 12 kilometers, the previous one.
Yes, yeah. 12.5.
Yeah, and I think this next one's going to be around about 9 or 10 kilometers or something like that, wasn't it? Something, or a bit lower than that. But I think I can imagine it'll still be able to do that maneuver, because in the 10.5 gear hop or flight, if you like, it still managed to fall for a good minute or two, didn't it? When it was just helicoptering through the sky. So I imagine that lower flight, I don't think it'd be too much of an issue. They'll just have to probably just fire up the engines a bit sooner to do that landing maneuver, hopefully without fail this time.
Yeah, I do believe we're going to see the exact same flight profile, just a little bit lower at the max altitude. It may be permitting, that is the reason why they lowered it as well.
Yeah, and the one thing with SN9 is that they are going to use helium for header tank pressurization. That's what Elon tweeted. And maybe that's the part where it failed with the autogenous pressurization system on SN8.
Yeah, because I don't believe SN8 had that, the helium. It was just using, trying to use the methane.
Using the boil off from the tanks themselves is how they originally did it. The helium is a proven system, so they're going to go back to old reliable. until they can figure out their new system.
Yeah. Because helium's used on quite a few different rockets for pressurization and everything else. But the thing Elon, I don't know if he said it on Twitter, I've heard a few guys mention it, that it adds extra weight because you've got to put a separate tank in it for and stuff like that. But if you have to do it, you have to do it, just to make ends meet for now until you resolve the solution with the other part of the rocket. But I can imagine by SN 10, 11, 12, I don't know which one we'll see it on, it might just jump back to the previous idea with using the boil off.
Yeah, I would think so.
I concur.
And I think it's strange that they changed two of the engines, whether they were too damaged or beyond repair for that, but something must have not quite gone right with that static fire. It seems awfully short when you compare them to some of the previous static fires.
It does.
Yeah, I mean, could it be that they still have problems with some material, gravel flying from the ground to the engines and or something like that?
Yeah, because it's very dusty, well, not atmosphere, but area where they are down at Boca Chica is very dry and dusty, and like you say, just a bit of gravel. All it takes is to accidentally get stuck in one of the engines or a bit of dust just on a sensor or anything like that. But there were some rumours that when we first saw one of the static fires, that we saw a bit of sheet of metal or something flying through the sky, and people were saying, "Oh, the nozzle's blown off one of the engines," but it turned out just to be a stray bit of metal that was off the pad or something like that, luckily, but maybe it was off the engine, who knows.
Yeah, I agree. I saw the piece of square-looking debris that flew off to the left of the cast.
Yeah. And more importantly, just moving on to next subject, SLS, we finally saw that do its static fire, or
we did.
Green run, finally. A bit over anticipated, considering it was only a minute long, but it seemed like a very big build up and then a very quick end. It was a bit of a anticlimax, shall I say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, for 1 minute it looked pretty awesome, but yeah, it ended quite fast.
It's nice to know that the RS-25s basically did their job, that it was more of I think, a sensor issue or a test stand issue that killed the test. It may possibly even a procedural issue, but the RS-25s, I think, were stars in the show.
Yeah, definitely. They said it was at the point where the gimbling started to properly kick in, almost like a test profile, and they think that something with the parameters on one of the, like you say, one of the sensors or the valves just noticed a slight anomaly to the point where it just had to shut down, and it just done that automatically. There's a few tweets that I've got information on it. I'll just read them out, and you guys can let me know what you think on that. But they said some of these are from Jim and some of these are from NASA. They said the test shut down shortly after a failure ID and MCF major component failure on engine 4. They didn't know yet what caused this, but all 4 engines were at 109%. Don't know how you get 109% out of the engines, but there you go. And they were doing their gimbal test, and there was a variable flash from the insulation blanket on engine number 4. So some sort of spark that's made that one fail by the looks of it. A bit strange that it said 109% power. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know what they mean by that figure, but there you go.
So I watched the press conference afterwards as well, and listened to Jim and the engineer, and that sounded kind of like what the failure point was. Of course, there was a lot of pat on the back speaking as well there, and some of the problems were overshadowed, and we're used to like Elon just tells us right straight out what they were. And these were a little vague, but They did a pretty good job, I thought.
Yeah, and I think they could have waited for a few more hours or even day before they actually released some information, because it was obvious they didn't have much information. And Ryan, when you talk about 109% of the engine power, I think the RS-25s were designed to run at 100%, but already on the shuttle age, they did run a bit higher, and now they are running even more higher.
Spinal Tap turn it up to 11.
Yeah, exactly.
This one goes to 110.
RS-25s are the only rocket engine that I've heard in real life. I witnessed a shuttle launch from quite some distance.
Nice. Well, I'm jealous.
Yeah, I'll just have to make do with the videos on YouTube of that one. Obviously, it's not flying anymore, so just have to make do with the videos on YouTube and the likes of that. But more interestingly, when they were doing that press conference, they hinted at that it might take a few months to delve through all the data and maybe come up with some resolutions, whether they'll just take the booster over to Kennedy Center and just put it on stack it and potentially do a proper static fire as such on the launch pad as sorts, or whether they'll put it on the back burner and just do another test in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I think they will do another static fire as soon as they see the data, and RS-25 engines need about 21 to 30 days to dry out before they can be refired again. So at least a few weeks, and the facility itself needs about 5 days to refuel the hydrogen and oxygen tanks.
Yeah, it's a good nugget of little information there on those engines. Just in stark contrast to where you have all these Blue Origins B4 engines and the Raptor engines, all just you can restart them up, and like the Merlin engines on the Falcon 9, all restartable, can be just cleaned up a little bit and then off you go again. But those RS-25s, just leave them a month to cool off; they'll be all right in a bit. It just seems an age away, the two different technologies. It's just a bit of a strange one, but it's just the path that NASA have been pursuing with this rocket and spent so much time on it that it just wouldn't make sense to cancel the rocket off. I know a lot of people are thinking it's a waste of money, it's this, it's that, but it's pretty much nigh on built. Why would you just scrap it when you just literally about there kind of thing?
Personally, I believe that SLS will be man-rated before Starship, and we're going to need something to fill that gap.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, yeah, hopefully 2022.
Yeah, I think they should definitely do at least one or at least two more tests, because the last thing you want is losing one or two RS-25 engines, or God forbid all of them, and then you can't switch off those solid rocket boosters. Once they're lit, they're like a candle. They're just going to go and they won't stop until they're out of fuel. And the last thing you want is those 4 RS-25 engines just to give up, and then the SLS core booster just to stall at apogee, and just the entire thing just a $1 billion rocket to fall back to Earth. It'd be the worst, probably, disaster ever for NASA in general.
They've learned from the disasters, of course, with the shuttle and Apollo. So I think they understand that time is their friend when it comes to testing. Do it again and again and again until you get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think the RS-25 engines are very reliable, and even though they are not designed to relight in flight, they are still reusable, and I think some of the engines are even 20 years old that they are flying.
Yeah. But it makes you think, like when you rewind back to the shuttle era, those RS-25 engines, there was just a good solid workhorse for the shuttle and everything. But it kind of makes you think, like, why did they have to do all those tests? But then it's a different system, it's a different rocket and everything. I've seen a few people on Twitter just not like official pages, but just people chatting around, just saying why did they need to test these engines when they've already flown dozens of times on the shuttle. But essentially, the SLS is within reason, a brand new rocket, albeit some heritage technology and everything from times gone by. But regardless of whether it's a new rocket with heritage technology or anything like that, it still needs to be tested and put through its paces, really, I think.
Yeah, and they did upgrade the flight computers for the engines. And this, as far as I know, this is the first time they fire multiple engines with the new computer. So it was about time they can test it.
Yes. About time.
Yeah. The thing I loved about them RS-25 engines is the way they light them up. It's just literally like a massive sparkler in a way, and then it just boom, just lights up. That's the thing I always remember from just watching the shuttle bits on online in documentaries and everything like that. Just an ignition sequence on that engine. It's just very unique to that engine.
Yeah, it's like they use a fireworks.
Yeah.
And just moving on from the mighty SLS to a new kid on the block, Virgin Orbit finally successfully launched their little Launcher One rocket off Cosmic Girl, the 747. Air-launched vehicle, this one rocket, just launched some CubeSats of NASA's, finally into orbit. Very successful launch. One or two little minor glitches with the rocket swaying side to side, a bit of pivot, and as it was ascending into space, but a very successful launch by the looks of it, from just going on from their first launch, which we had a few bouts of engines not starting up and everything like that, but fingers crossed have nailed those little errors with the computers and the engines, and want to see a lot more from them, hopefully later in the year.
Is it true that they felt it was safe enough that they actually had a paying customer on board that, a small sat?
Yeah, from the get-go. I mean, the first test launch actually had, I don't know if it was the same NASA payloads on the first test launch, but I believe they still managed to recover the rocket. I'm assuming they managed to save the rocket. It might have had a backup system of some sort of parachute in there, possibly. I don't know. We see very little on the live streams and stuff like that. A select few have access to it, and we get to see it later on, not shortly after. But that first launch and this one actually had little CubeSats and NASA's on there. But quite exciting considering they trust them that much with such a new vehicle. But NASA are very trusting in a lot of these startup companies by the looks of it, and rightly so. The working the arses off kind of thing, just getting everything sorted.
Yeah, I remember after the first failed flight, NASA did say that they are comfortable with them flying payloads because the payloads were not multi-million or multi-billion-dollar payloads. So they actually wanted them to fly them. As I think Virgin Orbit did ask NASA about them, that should they fly or not. And the first flight was, I think it was around 10 seconds that the engine fired after shutting down. And well, yeah, I was quite surprised they made it to orbit and payload separation. Congratulations, Virgin Orbit.
Yeah, congratulations, guys. If anyone's watching there from Virgin Orbit or anyone related who works for this launcher rocket and everything. But more interestingly, their Newton 4 upper stage ignited for the first time in the vacuum of space, and they successfully related the engine to successfully put those payloads into orbit. So as well as launching the Launcher One rocket for the first time, they've successfully managed to test their Newton 4 upper stage engine for the first time and relight it in space, which they weren't previously being able to do. So to do that first time as well was quite an achievement for such a new rocket as well.
For those not familiar with Virgin Orbit, Launcher 1 is the orbital rocket that is launched from a modified 747 to go into orbit. It is not the amusement park ride Virgin Starship 2 that carries passengers to the edge of space and back. It's two complete different systems.
Yeah, totally.
It's quite a unique flight profile as well, because obviously it's being dropped from the 747, a bit like you would like a cruise missile if you want to compare it to that. But then although it's got that horizontal trajectory, it's got to scoot itself up and get the vertical velocity. So in a way, it's got an advantage because it's already traveling without using any fuel, but at the same time, it's still got to work all that bit harder to get up into space. But in a way, you can take advantage of the 747 turning around, landing back down, pick another rocket up. And so in theory, they could do multiple launches in a day, just strap another rocket. You could have several rockets ready to go. The 747 lands, strap another one on, just keep the plane running, take off again, launch another one, and just keep going. So in theory, it's quite a quick turnaround when you think about it. In theory, as long as those rockets are lined up and ready to go, they could have a very fast turnaround. The likes of what Rocket Lab and SpaceX, the gearing up of SpaceX, have had over 50 launches in 2020, and they're gearing up for a lot more themselves. So maybe we could see the likes of Virgin Orbit maybe pushing for quite a few launches in 1 year.
Yeah, and their advantage over Rocket Lab, for example, is that they can launch into any inclination, and they can probably launch in worse weather conditions because they can actually fly away from the bad weather.
And also the system, it's designed in a way that it could, like you say, it can be launched from anywhere, but also from any country within reason. Obviously permitting governments and everything like that. But the plan is, once the system's proven and everything like that, they're potentially going to bring it over to the UK and launch it from some of the UK spaceports that are being developed over here as well.
Yeah,
that's definitely flexibility is Virgin Orbit's niche in the society, in the market, I mean.
Yeah, for sure. And if they launch from the UK, well, that's something I could actually come and try to spot in the skies.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be exciting to pop down there, and it just depends where they launch it. If they launch it overseas, we're obviously not going to get too much of a view of it, but hopefully we will. There's been some videos online of people relaxing on the beach and watching the Launcher 1 rocket take off and everything, so that'd be nice to see, just chilling out on the beach, having a few beers, and then just watching the rocket fly off into space. That'd be quite nice.
Yeah, for sure. And also looks like our predictions on the second small-sat launcher were a bit off. I remember I was thinking Astra will be the one, the second one on orbit, but turned out to be Virgin Orbit.
Yeah, Astra came very close. I believe they were literally just like a hair away from the velocity they needed to gain like a steady orbit, because they just didn't reach that quite the velocity that they needed for orbit. The vehicle eventually just, power of gravity just pulled it back down essentially, because obviously you needed to go faster than, essentially fast enough to escape the Earth's gravity within reason and stay in orbit. Otherwise, you're just going to come straight back down. So hopefully Astra can get nail that in their next launch, which I'm assuming they're doing very soon. And I mean, later in the year coming up, we've got so many rockets and new companies. We've got Sky Aurora here in the UK, up in Scotland. They're launching hopefully within the next 3 to 4 months one of their first orbital rockets. suborbital, and then you've got Firefly launching one of their demo first launches in the next month or so. Few dates for both of those, but nothing confirmed as yet. And then for the likes of the bigger companies, you've got Vulcan, Starship, Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket, obviously, but a lot of small rockets and gigantic rockets, moon rockets, if you like, of all sizes coming in 2021. Probably the biggest year for space since the Apollo program, essentially.
Yeah, I can't wait for Rocket Lab to catch a rocket with a helicopter. Actually catch an orbital rocket with a helicopter. They've already caught a rocket with the helicopter, but they dropped it with another helicopter.
Yeah.
And we've got a few launches coming up later in the week. We've got hopefully SpaceX are going to go for a late 8th launch and landing of one of their Falcon 9 boosters. I believe that's going to be a new record set for them. They've already got two or three boosters at the 7 launch and landings, but I believe 8 the next magic number. So events very soon, I believe some of the boosters will be in double figures, which would be quite staggering, because I believe Elon stated that the boosters, once they get to 9 or 10 launch and landings, that's when the money really starts tumbling down for them, cost per launch.
Yeah, and also with this launch, if they launch tomorrow, as they are supposed to, they will make a new refurbishment time record between flights. It's under 40 days. I think it was 32 or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, they've got that many boosters to hand within reason. They could just use a different booster within reason, but I suppose it's always good to set that record using the same booster for 2 different, and just pushing the limits of what the company can do, rather than just using, we'll just get another rocket in kind of thing, just to prove the fact that we can land this rocket, clean it up if we need to, get it ready, and then launch it back off kind of thing. It's quite an achievement to literally prep a reusable rocket in such a short period of time. I mean, we've seen Blue Origin's New Shepard, although it's a little vehicle, we've seen very little of that. How quick of a turnaround they're going to do with some of their rockets, who knows? Hopefully just as quick. And some of the other companies coming online, hopefully they can reach the heights of what SpaceX are using reusability-wise, because SpaceX are definitely the leaders in reusable technology at the moment.
I agree.
Is there any bits you want to add, Warhawk, before we just wrap up?
The only other rocket launch that we missed was the Blue Origin New Shepard. They had their test launch went up and was successful. It seemed to be the booster had a little bit of landing trouble, but it hit the mark. I think they have a little bit of work to do there, but Mannequin Skywalker made it down okay.
Yeah. There was some wind violations before the launch, the rocket on that one, and they paused quite a few times just before launch. It was quite a smooth flight, like we've seen previously, very slow and steady, come down, launch, and then just as the rocket came down, you just saw it lean. That lean just before it touched the ground was actually a good 10 or 20 meters away from the landing pad. So it literally just had to tilt, do a little hover, and just land at the edge of the landing pad, just to burn off that last little bit of fuel just before it cut out. Well, quite good to see that it's the technology that it recognises that it's not anywhere near the launch pad. It can counteract the wind and then launch. It's quite stable, that rocket. It's very promising, because I'd love to see how that technology transfers over to the New Glenn rocket. Will it be as stable as the New Shepard? So I'd love to see that, because obviously we see the Falcon 9, literally a suicide dive, very rough and ready their landings. Still awesome to see, but New Shepard, it just takes it to that finer bit of level of just more control, more composure, come down kind of thing. So I'd love to see that on the new Glen.
Yeah, and if you want to hear my opinion about Blue Origin's latest New Shepard flight, I did a deep dive about it. It was released over the weekend. So check that out if you haven't.
And I highly recommend it. I've listened to it myself, Miko. It's really, really informative and fantastic. You cover all the bases and everything. So I recommend that to everyone. Make sure you go and listen to Miko's deep dive into that one. Thanks for joining us again this week, guys. I've been Ryan from the Space Update.
And I've been Mikko, the host of Deep Dive Fridays.
I'm Mike, better known as Warhawk on YouTube.
Thanks, guys. And a big thank you to all our Patreon supporters. Warhawk himself right there. Angry Astronaut, Howard Walker, Sammy Oscuro, What About It, Jacqueline and Sebastian, or To the Future. Gaio Pagalari, Framrick, Susie, and Marco. Thank you guys for what we do. And if you would like to support us, like these guys here, in what we do on YouTube and podcast and everything, head over to patreon.com/Total Space. Where else can they find us, Miko?
And we have just released our new website. So please go check that out at totalspace.net. And you can also follow us on Twitter at totalspacenet.
Yeah, all the guys here at TotalSpace.net are just wonderful to work with, and it's a great group to be a part of. I highly recommend everybody to check it out.
Yeah, hashtag Team Space. Thanks for joining us, guys. Have a great week. Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.